Hallo iedereen, welkom bij Dutch&Go. Today I want to talk to you about what might be a sensitive topic or a difficult topic. I'm going to talk about accents and why you shouldn't feel so insecure or self-aware about your accent and some different perspectives. This is a video that's also partially like a rant, because I'm just also going to talk a little bit about my experiences as a language teacher with different accents and also how it sort of is used in textbooks, or rather not used. So I'm just going to talk about accents in general. This is just some random thoughts, random ideas that I had and that I just wanted to share with you, because I hope that it helps to make you feel a little bit better and less afraid of speaking and using the language. So first of all, let's determine what we are talking about here. I'm talking here about speaking a language, in our case Dutch, with an accent, but the accent is not so strong that it actually becomes hard for you to be understood by other speakers of the language. That's the kind of audience here that I'm addressing. If you find that you are speaking Dutch and people don't understand you because of your accent, then yeah, sorry, then you need to get to work and you need to work on that, because it's a shame to have great grammatical knowledge, lots of vocabulary, but then not be understood because of your pronunciation or because of your accent. So you always want to make sure that, you are understood. Once you've crossed this threshold, once you've crossed this border of being understood, then yeah, it depends a bit on your own personal goal, ambition, dream, whatever it is, to what extent you want to get rid of your accent, because basically you can speak Dutch well with an accent without having any problems being understood, to speaking it almost accent free. Some extra context: speaking a language actually 100% accent free, no accent whatsoever, nothing, nada, niente, it's kind of difficult. I mean, if we look at neuroscience tells us that, it becomes quite difficult for adults to learn a language the older we get, because of the way that our brain works. I'm not going to go into the details now. But generally speaking, the older we get, the more difficult it can be to learn a new language, also depending on, previous exposure, general interests, motivation, I don't know, a whole bunch of factors, of course. But let's say that age is not on our side, let's put it like that. So of course the chances are that if you start to learn a language when you're 30, the chances that you'll be able to speak the language 100% without an accent, it's not impossible, but you're gonna have to work really hard at it. It will be, quite hard work to get there. In my case, for example, I speak English and I would say that I'm quite happy with my English, but I learned English when I was 11 from watching movies, listening to music, and then I started to use it, I don't know, and I always had a feel for the language and I always had a personal interest for the language. And even I know that I don't speak English 100% accent free. I'm fine with that. That's okay. I know that it's not 100% like American English. Sometimes I make a little, slip up when it comes to the pronunciation. For me, that's okay. I'm happy with my level of English. So of course, the extent to where you want to go with your Dutch, that of course I'll leave completely up to you. But yeah, just pay attention to that. Another thing to keep in mind, of course, it's completely normal for you to feel frustrated about the fact that you have an accent if other people constantly point out to you that you have an accent. That might be, of course, depending on, again, where we are in the spectrum. If your accent might actually become a difficulty for other people to understand you, then again, it's time to get to work. But it might also just be because people in general in the Netherlands, in Flanders, are not really used to foreigners using Dutch. Like there's no, let's say, mental framework for that. It's also not something that we learn in general language education. We also don't really learn in general language education in high school that, for example, speaking a language completely 100% accent free when you get older is quite a tricky thing to do. Like, a lot of people are missing this kind of basic context, and therefore also cannot really conceptualize what it is to learn a foreign language in the systematic, maybe intense way that you've done. I mean, a lot of Dutch, Flemish people do speak English, French, etc., but most of them have learned it in high school, but not really in the sort of maybe more systematic, more structural approach as you have done in your own language class, for example, or as intensively. It's more due to general exposure over a certain period of time. So, do take that into account. I can also understand that it's really frustrating and it can make you feel really insecure if you speak Dutch with an accent and then people in the Netherlands switch to English. Then unfortunately, if you've been living in the Netherlands for a long time, you speak Dutch well, and it still happens to you, I can totally understand that that's incredibly frustrating. Of course, I mean, you can, again, work on your accent and train, and if it frustrates you so much. So, unfortunately, either work on your accents more, or accept that that is a little bit how Dutch society is, and also understand that it doesn't necessarily always come from a bad place. It doesn't always come from a place of like, his or her Dutch sucks, so now I need to switch to English. That's not it. It's just that they hear an accent, so they presume that that person is a foreigner, and therefore they want to accommodate. It's not always from a bad place, but I understand if you've been living in the Netherlands for a long time and people still switch to English because they presume that you don't speak Dutch all that well. That is incredibly frustrating. The amounts or how frustrating that is for you, that's something you have to determine, and which actions you undertake afterwards, I would also leave up to you. But if you would be interested, I could also, of course, still make a video about how to work on your accent. I think that could also be a good topic, and I would love to hear from you in the comment box if you have thoughts about that topic. As a final note, and this comes from a very personal place as a language teacher, I think textbooks should do more to showcase the variety of accents and dialects that we already have in the Netherlands and Flanders. I think that is a super important thing. I'm not saying that on an A1, A2 level, you should already, use dialogues where people speak different accents to practice Dutch. That's not my point. I mean, I think especially in an A1, A2 level, it's important to just have a consistent kind of approach to Dutch, consistent exposure. That's really important. But once you get to B1, B2 level, where you also just look beyond the horizons of, day-to-day activities, your life, and things like that, and just look at society in general, I do wish that there were more textbooks that focus on showcasing just the different varieties. The point here is not to teach students all of the different varieties so they can speak all these varieties. No. It's just to showcase, look, these are communities, these are diverse communities that speak Dutch in their own way. For example, the Dutch as used by the Moroccan community in Antwerp. Very, very interesting. If you want to hear an example of that, you can hear it in the movie Patser by Adil and Bilal, and it's a super interesting example of a community that has been using Dutch in their own way, in their own urban identity, community, etc. For a couple of generations. And I think being aware of that and becoming aware of that is also something that I think will help you to understand, well, at some point everybody was just a migrant and they just started using the language, adapting it to their own identity, needs, situations, circumstances, and from there this new offspring or variety of Dutch started to grow, and everybody kind of like started like that. So don't feel too insecure about having an accent, and I think that's really where textbooks and their responsibilities come in, showcasing varieties. there's also, I think, something discriminatory-ish or something problematic at work in the way that you have the standardized language, which is sort of considered to be the ideal, and then you have its many varieties and dialects. And I would still say that, especially by the local, let's say, white Flemish community and the Dutch people, there is definitely a distinction between, on the one hand, the indigenous language varieties of Dutch, dialects, versus then communities, cultural identities from migrants, communities, using Dutch in their own way. There is let's say, different levels of appreciation for that. And I think if we could include more examples of all of these legitimately interesting varieties of Dutch that exist, both native and non-native, from migrants' background, let's say, then I think that could also just help students in general just to become a little bit more relaxed and just make you feel less self-aware about having an accent or feeling maybe insecure. Everybody started out, all of the migrant communities at some point started out where you were maybe now. So that's, which is a general complaint that I have about, cultural inclusiveness in textbooks and representation, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not going to go into that. But it's a general complaint. Do with it what you will. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was interesting. Leave a comment in the comment box down below because I would love to hear from you. I hope I didn't offend anyone. It's incredibly difficult to talk about this in a nuanced way, and there's so many nuances and things that I haven't even touched upon because it's such a complicated subject. But I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear your perspective and your, let's say, experience of speaking Dutch. And if you feel self-conscious or aware or sad about having an accent, etc. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. Dit was Dutch&Go. Tot de volgende keer. Dag!